Chapter 1: Unexpected Delivery. The relentless Oregon rain hammered against the corrugated iron roof of the Marine Biology Research Facility, a rhythmic counterpoint to the frantic thumping of Evelyn Reed's heart. She stared at the bizarre, bioluminescent creature washed ashore, a creature that defied every classification she'd ever encountered. 6 feet tall, vaguely humanoid, but with skin like iridescent, shifting opal and 8 incredibly flexible limbs ending in surprisingly dexterous fingers. It was breathtaking. And utterly terrifying. "Oh, sweet mother of Darwin," she breathed, kneeling beside the unconscious form. Its skin pulsed with a soft, internal light, a mesmerizing display of blues, greens, and violets. The rain plastered its long, dark, almost silken hair to its head, obscuring what might have been a face. One arm, oddly delicate despite its size, lay at an unnatural angle. Evelyn, a woman who'd faced down aggressive sharks and venomous jellyfish without flinching, felt a wave of pure, unadulterated panic. This wasn't in any textbook. This wasn't anything she'd ever imagined. She fumbled for her waterproof comm unit, her voice trembling slightly as she activated it. "Dr. Anya Sharma, this is Evelyn Reed. I need immediate assistance. I've got a situation. A very unusual situation. It's an alien. I think." A crackle of static, then Anya's crisp voice, laced with disbelief. "Evelyn, are you sure? You've been working too hard. Are you having a hallucination induced by, what was that marine toxin again?" "No hallucination, Anya. It's huge, bioluminescent, and possibly injured. Get a team here, now. And bring the medkit, the big medkit." Evelyn carefully checked the alien's pulse, a surprisingly strong, rapid beat. She checked for breathing, shallow but present. The creature was alive, and somehow, incredibly beautiful. There was a certain elegance to its form, despite its otherworldly appearance. A thought, both absurd and alluring, skittered across her mind: he's gorgeous. After what felt like an eternity, a team of bewildered researchers arrived, their faces mirroring Evelyn's mixture of awe and apprehension. They cautiously approached the alien, their movements hesitant, their eyes wide. As the med team began working, a faint shimmer of light intensified around the alien's eyes. He stirred, a low groan rumbling from deep within his chest, a sound surprisingly like a contented purr, but with an underlying resonance that vibrated through Evelyn's bones. His eyes snapped open. They were enormous, intelligent, and a startling shade of emerald green. He looked at Evelyn, a flicker of something, confusion. Fear? Intrigue? Passing across his multifaceted gaze. He blinked, then spoke. The sound was not a language, but a series of clicks and whistles that somehow resonated deep within Evelyn's soul, a primal language of emotion. "Zorp? Globner? Xylos," he whispered, his voice a low hum that vibrated in the air around them. The word sounded oddly familiar, like a half-remembered melody. Evelyn stared at him, speechless. He was beautiful, alien, injured, and utterly, inexplicably fascinating. This was going to be one hell of a research project. And maybe, just maybe, something more. A slow, warm blush crept up her cheeks. This was going to be much more than just a research project. She had a feeling this was the beginning of a very, very complicated romance. Chapter 2: The Bioluminescent Courtship. Over the next few days, Evelyn learned more about Zorp Globner and the Globner mating rituals than she ever thought possible. It turned out that Zorp's clicks and whistles were a highly sophisticated form of telepathic communication, a fact discovered when he accidentally communicated his intense hunger for a particular type of kelp, resulting in a frantic midnight trip to the nearest seaweed farm. Zorp's recovery was surprisingly swift. He healed quickly, his iridescent skin constantly shifting colors in response to his changing moods. However, his attempts at courtship were, well, let's just say they were unconventional. The first incident occurred during a seemingly routine medical checkup. As Dr. Sharma examined Zorp's arm, Zorp's skin began to glow with an intense, pulsating blue light, accompanied by a series of rhythmic clicks and whistles. Dr. Sharma," Evelyn stammered, trying to suppress a giggle. I think he's trying to woo you. Dr. Sharma, a woman renowned for her calm demeanor, raised an eyebrow. Woo me? Evelyn, this is a medical examination, not a Glaubner mating ritual. I know, but look, Evelyn whispered, pointing to Zorp's intensifying luminescence. It's getting brighter. And the clicking's escalating. Zorp then proceeded to perform a complex series of underwater movements. The examination room had a conveniently placed research aquarium, his skin flashing a vibrant rainbow of colors. It was mesmerizing, even if it involved him attempting to braid seaweed into Dr. Sharma's hair. Dr. Sharma, despite her initial apprehension, found herself strangely captivated. Evelyn, she sighed, I suddenly feel the need for a vacation. In a very secluded location, possibly involving a warm ocean. Later, Evelyn attempted to explain the Glaubner mating ritual to Zorp, using drawings and highly simplified diagrams of what she interpreted as the intricacies of Glaubner courtship. Zorp's understanding of human customs, however, was limited. So, Zorp said one evening, his skin glowing a soft amber, to impress human female, I must offer shiny objects. He produced a handful of perfectly smooth, bioluminescent pebbles, each radiating a different color. He presented them to Evelyn with a flourish, his 8 eyes wide with what Evelyn could only interpret as earnest hope. Zorp, Evelyn said, trying to suppress a smile, while I appreciate the gesture, those are not appropriate. Despite herself, she found the attempt incredibly endearing. The pebbles were beautiful, and there was something surprisingly romantic about his earnest sincerity. She did, however, manage to steer him away from showering her with luminous pebbles and towards a more appropriate courtship method, a series of increasingly elaborate and charming conversations about deep-sea ecosystems. However, the issue of Zorp's amphibious nature still loomed large. He needed both land and water, and the research facility was clearly designed with neither in mind. That evening, Zorp's skin glowed an anxious crimson as he attempted to fill the facility's small, research aquarium to the brim with seawater, nearly flooding the entire lab in the process. It turned out that his nesting instincts were less than subtle. Evelyn found herself increasingly charmed by his blatant, clumsy romantic efforts, even as she scrambled to prevent another potential flood. This was certainly turning into the most unusual and exciting challenge of her career. Chapter 3, Small Town, Big Problem. The news, as it often does, traveled faster than light. Or, at least, faster than Evelyn could have hoped. Word of the bioluminescent alien at the secluded marine biology research facility spread through the small coastal town of Seabrook like wildfire, fueled by breathless whispers and increasingly embellished accounts. The next morning, Evelyn found herself facing a horde of reporters, their cameras flashing like a swarm of fireflies, outside the facility's gates. The local sheriff, a kindly but bewildered man named Dale, stood beside her, looking distinctly overwhelmed. Sheriff Dale, one particularly aggressive reporter shouted, "Is it true? Is there really an alien in your town?" Sheriff Dale, clearly unprepared for this level of media frenzy, stammered, "Well, there's a situation. We're investigating." Evelyn stepped forward, attempting to restore some semblance of order. "Good morning, everyone. We are aware of the unique situation at the research facility. However, I cannot disclose any information regarding the guest at this time. Please respect the privacy of both the facility and..." She paused, choosing her words carefully, the individual involved. The reporters, however, were not easily dissuaded. They peppered her with questions about Zorp's origins, his abilities, his potential romantic interests. One particularly cheeky reporter even asked if he was looking for a human girlfriend. Evelyn deflected every query with practiced diplomacy, but the pressure was mounting. That evening, as Evelyn was trying to explain the concept of personal space to a rather persistent Zorp, who seemed to think that clinging to her like a particularly colorful octopus was a sign of affection, a frantic call came from Sheriff Dale. "Dr. Reed," he said, his voice strained, "we've got a problem. A big one. The town, they're planning a welcome party for your guest. They don't seem to understand the word subtlety. Evelyn sighed. This was not going according to plan. She could already imagine the scene, a town hall filled with armed citizens, pitchforks and torches optional but highly likely, all intent on greeting Zorp. Then a different voice chimed in, a gravelly but friendly baritone. "Sheriff, that's my cue. I'm here to help you keep those hillbillies from burning down the research facility. You reckon I should bring my harpoon?" It was Jebediah Jeb Stone, a local fisherman known for his quirky charm, his extensive knowledge of the coastline, and his surprisingly effective method of resolving community disputes using a combination of tall tales and unexpected acts of kindness. "Jeb." Sheriff Dale's voice was a mixture of relief and resignation. "This is why I needed a vacation. And someone to handle the alien situation." Evelyn, suddenly feeling a surge of hope, found herself smiling. It seemed that even in the midst of an intergalactic diplomatic incident, Seabrook was still Seabrook, a town where even a bioluminescent alien could not quite escape the charm of local eccentricity. Maybe Jebediah was just the unexpected ally she needed. This was going to be interesting. And probably involve a whole lot of calming down a mob of very confused townspeople. Chapter 4, Communication Breakdown and Breakthrough. The welcome party was averted, thanks to Jeb's surprisingly effective combination of tall tales, involving a highly embellished account of Zorp's ability to summon giant kraken, and strategically placed barrels of his homemade apple cider, remarkably potent. The townsfolk, slightly mellowed by the cider and thoroughly spooked by the kraken story, agreed to a temporary truce, allowing Evelyn and Zorp some breathing room. However, the communication barrier remained a significant hurdle. While Zorp's telepathic abilities allowed for a rudimentary exchange of emotions and basic concepts, complex ideas and nuanced conversations proved challenging. Evelyn, armed with a whiteboard, a collection of brightly colored markers, and an encyclopedic knowledge of marine biology, which surprisingly proved useful, began a painstaking process of visual communication. She drew diagrams, labeled pictures, and even attempted to recreate some of Zorp's intricate underwater courtship dances, much to Zorp's amusement and the mild horror of her colleagues. "Okay, Zorp," Evelyn said one afternoon, pointing to a drawing of a fish. "This is a salmon. It's delicious. And not you." She added the last part quickly, noticing Zorp's slightly offended glow. Zorp, in response, produced a series of complex geometric shapes on the whiteboard, his 8 fingers moving with surprising dexterity. The result resembled a highly advanced astrophysical diagram, with symbols Evelyn had never encountered before. I think that's a map," Evelyn murmured, studying the strange symbols. "A map of Xylos?" Zorp nodded enthusiastically, his skin shifting to a bright, optimistic turquoise. The breakthrough was slow, painstaking, and often hilarious. They worked together, Evelyn carefully interpreting Zorp's visual cues, Zorp slowly adapting to human communication styles. One evening, while attempting to explain the complexities of human romance, a concept apparently baffling to a species whose mating rituals involved bioluminescent displays and elaborate seaweed braiding, Evelyn found herself leaning closer to Zorp. "So," Evelyn said, her voice soft, "in human courtship, we often share intimate moments. Moments of physical closeness." She felt a blush rise on her cheeks. She had never talked about this to anyone so explicitly before. Zorp tilted his head, his skin shifting to a curious lavender. He extended one of his delicate tentacles, gently touching Evelyn's cheek. The contact sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't romantic in a typical human way, but it was deeply intimate, a silent understanding that transcended words, languages, and even species. In that moment, the communication barrier seemed to vanish. They understood each other, not through words or diagrams, but through a shared moment of vulnerability, connection, and undeniable mutual attraction. The next step, figuring out what intimate moments might mean between a human and a globner, was going to be another challenge entirely. But somehow, Evelyn felt ready to tackle it. Chapter 5, The Mating Season. The breakthrough in communication was short-lived, overshadowed by a far more pressing issue, Zorp's mating season. Evelyn had learned that globner mating seasons were not subtle affairs. They were accompanied by a dramatic increase in bioluminescence, heightened emotional sensitivity, and an overwhelming urge to, well, mate. The first sign was the color change. Zorp's skin, usually a kaleidoscope of shifting hues, began to glow with an almost painful intensity, a vibrant, pulsating crimson that seemed to radiate heat. He became increasingly restless, pacing the research facility like a caged panther, his clicks and whistles escalating into a constant, almost frantic hum. Evelyn, he communicated telepathically, his voice thick with urgency, nesting instincts activating. Require appropriate environment. Evelyn, who had been diligently working on translating ancient Glaubner poetry, apparently highly erotic, stared at him in dawning horror. Appropriate environment? Zorp, we're in a marine biology lab, not a Glaubner breeding ground. The next few days were a chaotic blur of accidental floods, Zorp's attempts to create a suitable aquatic nesting site, near misses with the local fire department, triggered by Zorp's increasingly intense bioluminescence, and numerous awkward encounters with the increasingly curious, and slightly concerned, research team. One evening, during a particularly intense bioluminescent outburst, Zorp accidentally turned the entire facility into a shimmering, underwater-themed disco. The flashing lights and pulsating colors were hypnotic, if slightly disorienting, resulting in a completely unplanned but strangely enjoyable dance party involving Evelyn, Zorp, and several very bewildered scientists. I think he's trying to create a mating dance, Dr. Sharma commented, staring at Zorp's intricate light show with a bemused expression. She then added, though I've seen less sophisticated disco balls in a student's dorm room. The climax of the mating season arrived unexpectedly. During a powerful storm, a particularly large wave crashed against the facility, causing a partial power outage. In the darkness, Zorp's bioluminescence became even more intense, creating a breathtaking, if slightly terrifying, spectacle. He turned to Evelyn, his skin a mesmerizing blend of crimson, gold, and emerald green. He reached out, his tentacle gently brushing her hand. The touch was electric, charged with an intensity that left Evelyn breathless. Evelyn, he communicated, his telepathic voice filled with a raw, potent emotion that transcended language. Choose your path. With me or without. Evelyn stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. The decision was incredibly complex, a whirlwind of scientific curiosity, cultural understanding, and undeniable, overwhelming attraction. The choice between human convention and an interspecies romance weighed heavily on her shoulders. Her life was never going to be mundane again, no matter what she chose. Chapter 6: Government Intervention. Evelyn chose her path. She chose Zorp. The decision, while incredibly exhilarating, brought with it a whole new set of problems, chief among them, the government. News of the bioluminescent alien had, unsurprisingly, reached higher authorities. A team from a shadowy government agency known only as Project Nightingale arrived at the research facility, their faces grim, their intentions less than clear. The leader, a stern woman named Agent Thorne, wasted no time in laying down the law. Dr. Reed, she said, her voice cold and precise, we are taking custody of the Glaubner subject. His presence poses a national security risk. Evelyn, however, was not easily intimidated. Agent Thorne, she retorted, her voice equally firm, Zorp is not a subject. His ascension being, and he's under my protection. You'll have to go through me to get to him. Agent Thorne smirked. Dr. Reed, we appreciate your dedication. But your scientific curiosity has led you to a dangerous situation. Cooperation is in your best interest. That was when Jebediah Stone, seemingly materializing out of thin air, interjected. Hold on a minute, Agent Thorne. I know a thing or two about protecting critters from those who want to cage them. Ever wrestled a pissed-off 6-foot octopus with iridescent skin? Because I've seen a few today. And I'm not sure your boys have the right gear for that. He winked at Evelyn. The ensuing chaos was epic. It involved a high-speed chase through the Oregon coastline, a surprisingly nimble Zorp using his telepathic abilities to control local seagulls, which created a significant diversion, and Jebediah expertly navigating his battered fishing boat through treacherous waters, all while dropping well-placed fish-related puns. Agent Thorne's team, clearly unprepared for such unconventional tactics, were hopelessly outmaneuvered. They were a force of highly trained professionals, but nothing could prepare them for a 6-foot-tall, bioluminescent octopus, aided by a fleet of very angry seagulls and a fisherman with a remarkably well-stocked arsenal of nautical-themed puns. They were completely outmatched. Evelyn and Jebediah managed to lead Zorp to a hidden, secluded cove, a place known only to local fishermen. It was a small, isolated section of the coast, virtually inaccessible to outsiders, and perfect for a temporary hideout. Hidden inside a cavern, surrounded by the echoing sound of the waves, Evelyn, Zorp and Jebediah exchanged exhausted but relieved glances. They had evaded the government, but their troubles were far from over. Project Nightingale wouldn't give up that easily. And Evelyn now had a new, slightly more urgent, problem, protecting Zorp from a powerful government agency while navigating the complexities of an interspecies romance during his still-raging mating season. It was going to be a very interesting few weeks. Chapter 7, A Choice of Worlds. The secluded cove proved to be a temporary haven, but the tension was palpable. Project Nightingale's relentless pursuit cast a long shadow over their newfound sanctuary. The constant hum of Zorp's heightened bioluminescence, a byproduct of his still-raging mating season, added to the atmosphere of urgency. One evening, nestled amongst the rocks, with the waves crashing against the shore, Zorp turned to Evelyn. His skin shimmered with a complex blend of colors, the crimson of his mating season, the turquoise of hope, and the deep indigo of uncertainty. Evelyn, he communicated telepathically, his voice filled with a raw vulnerability that tugged at her heartstrings. Xylos calls. My people need me. But if you? He trailed off, his 8 eyes searching hers. The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, a question of loyalty, of belonging, of a love that defied the boundaries of planets and species. Evelyn reached out, her fingers brushing his tentacle. The touch sparked a wave of warmth and understanding that went beyond words. Zorp, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper above the crashing waves. You don't have to choose. We can find a way. A way for you to be with your people, and with me. This, however, was easier said than done. The challenge was immense, requiring a blend of scientific ingenuity, diplomatic finesse, and a dash of sheer luck. The conversation about finding a solution that worked for both Zorp and herself became surprisingly more intimate. In Globner culture, Zorp communicated, his voice tinged with a strange mixture of shyness and intensity. Mating bonds are deeply intertwined with physical union. The exchange of bioluminescent fluids is essential. Evelyn blinked, her cheeks flushing a crimson that rivaled Zorp's mating glow. She'd studied Globner biology, of course, but the intimate details of their reproductive cycle had always seemed academic. Now, facing the raw, emotional reality of their situation, the details became very, very real. Well, she said, trying to sound casual, we could research the specifics. For scientific purposes, of course. Purely scientific. Despite her attempt at nonchalance, her voice betrayed her nervous excitement. Their discussion, while initially focused on finding a diplomatic solution to Zorp's predicament, quickly turned towards a surprisingly deep exploration of their nascent romance. They talked of compatibility, of bridging the vast cultural and biological differences between them. As the night deepened, their conversation took on a new level of intimacy, a blend of scientific curiosity and burgeoning passion. The issue of maintaining their relationship across interstellar distances, of navigating the complexities of an interspecies romance, and of what that would even mean in physical terms, became a shared challenge, a bond that strengthened their connection. They had a difficult path ahead, but somehow, the raw vulnerability, shared intimacy, and emotional honesty had helped them navigate the hardest step. They were together, and facing it together. The choice was clear, even if the solution wasn't. They would find a way. Together. Chapter 8, Acceptance and Understanding. Escaping Project Nightingale was only half the battle. The other half involved navigating the complex social dynamics of Seabrook, a town initially gripped by fear and then, thanks to Jeb's tall tales and potent apple cider, a strange mixture of curiosity and cautious acceptance. Evelyn knew they couldn't remain hidden forever. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a particularly violent storm, a section of the coastal cliffs collapsed, threatening several houses. Zorp, despite his exhaustion from his recent mating season, instinctively acted. Using his telekinetic abilities, a skill Evelyn hadn't yet fully grasped, he subtly manipulated the flow of water and redirected the debris, preventing significant damage. The townsfolk witnessed this act of unexpected heroism. What had begun as fear and suspicion quickly shifted to awe and gratitude. Zorp, the strange, bioluminescent alien, had saved their homes, their community. The next morning, Seabrook was buzzing with the news. The local newspaper ran a front-page story, headlined, "Alien Saves Seabrook." The article, remarkably, was largely positive, showcasing Zorp's selfless act and highlighting the unique bond between him and Evelyn. Evelyn used this opportunity to address the town at a hastily arranged community meeting. She spoke of Zorp's gentle nature, his intelligence, his love for marine life, and, of course, his talent for spectacular light shows. "He's not a monster," she stated, her voice resonating with conviction. "He's not a threat. He's a bit of an oddball, admittedly, but he's also got a heart of gold, or rather, a heart of shimmering bioluminescent opal." Her speech was met with a mixture of applause, relieved sighs, and a scattering of nervous giggles. The initial fear had largely subsided, replaced by a grudging, but genuine, acceptance. Zorp's heroism had broken down the barriers of fear and prejudice. This was not an invasion, but an unexpected opportunity for cultural exchange. That evening, Jebediah organized a celebratory bonfire on the beach. It was a community gathering, a chance to express gratitude, celebrate a shared experience, and appreciate the unexpected gift of a bioluminescent alien saving the day. Zorp, surrounded by the warm glow of the fire, and even warmer glances from some of the town's more single ladies, seemed genuinely happy, his skin shifting through a rainbow of joyful colors. He even attempted to teach the locals a simple Glaubner dance, resulting in a hilarious, yet charming, display of interspecies camaraderie. Evelyn, watching from the sidelines, felt a surge of contentment. They had overcome the initial obstacles, proving that humanity, at its best, is capable of compassion, understanding, and even love across the vast gulf of space, different cultures, and surprisingly different mating rituals. There was still a long way to go, a long road ahead to navigate, and more than a few unexpected hurdles yet to face, but as she looked at Zorp, she knew that they would face those challenges together. And maybe, just maybe, along the way, they could even manage a few more unintentionally hilarious dance parties. Chapter 9, A New Beginning. The newfound acceptance in Seabrook didn't solve all their problems. Project Nightingale was still a threat, and Zorp's long-term future remained uncertain. But the shift in public perception created an opening, a chance to negotiate, to find a solution that respected both Zorp's needs and the concerns of the authorities. Evelyn, with Jebediah as surprisingly effective behind-the-scenes diplomacy and a newfound alliance with some surprisingly sympathetic members of the scientific community, crafted a proposal. It wasn't a simple solution, it was a multi-pronged approach designed to appease the government while ensuring Zorp's well-being and freedom. The core of the proposal involved creating a unique research facility, a biodome, essentially, designed to mimic the conditions of Xylos, providing Zorp with the aquatic environment he needed while allowing for controlled observation and study. It would be a collaborative effort between the government, the scientific community, and, most importantly, Zorp himself. He would be a willing participant, not a captive. Presenting the proposal to Agent Thorne was a nerve-wracking experience. Thorne, however, seemed surprisingly receptive, or at least, less resistant than Evelyn had anticipated. "Dr. Reed," Thorne said, her voice still carrying an undercurrent of suspicion, "your proposal is unconventional. But it addresses our concerns. We want to understand the Glaubner, their capabilities, their culture. This biodome could provide invaluable data." There was a flicker of something else in Thorne's eyes, a hint of grudging admiration for Evelyn's resilience, her ingenuity, and her unwavering commitment to Zorp. "And what about Dr. Reed's close relationship with the Glaubner subject?" a junior agent asked, his tone laced with thinly veiled curiosity. "Agent Miller," Thorne said sharply, before Evelyn could even formulate a response, "that is irrelevant to the scientific objectives of this project. We are interested in data, not drama." The Biodome project was approved. It would be a collaborative venture, a testament to human ingenuity and interspecies cooperation. The construction of the Biodome began, a flurry of activity involving scientists, engineers, and even a few enthusiastic members of the Seabrook community. Jebediah, of course, played a key role, offering his expertise in construction and underwater engineering. He had a surprisingly extensive knowledge of building things that could withstand the wrath of the ocean. The Biodome was finished, an architectural marvel that seamlessly blended technology and nature. As Zorp stepped into his new habitat, his skin radiating a joyful luminescence, Evelyn felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. They had created not a prison, but a sanctuary, a place where Zorp could thrive, where his cultural heritage would be respected, and where his relationship with Evelyn could blossom. The Biodome would be home, a home for Zorp, a shared research center, and a very interesting place to conduct research on interspecies romantic relations. The new beginning wasn't without its challenges. They still had to address the complexities of an interspecies relationship, one that would require them to find ways to accommodate vastly different biological needs and cultural norms. But as they stood together in the Biodome, hand in tentacle, they felt a wave of shared optimism, a confident anticipation of the future. The future, now, was filled with hope, with possibilities, and with a shared commitment to making their unusual romance work. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be an adventure. And together, they would face it. Chapter 10, Honeymoon on Xylos? The Biodome was a success. Zorp thrived, the research yielded fascinating insights into Glaubner biology and culture, and Seabrook became a surprising hub for interspecies relations, though the local tourism board was still working on the marketing slogan. Evelyn and Zorp's relationship blossomed, a testament to the power of love and understanding, even across vastly different cultures and biological makeups. However, their idyllic life in the Biodome wasn't without its humorous quirks. Zorp's attempts to incorporate Glaubner courtship rituals into their daily routine sometimes led to unexpected, and occasionally messy, situations. One particularly memorable incident involved a bioluminescent seaweed braiding incident that resulted in a temporary shutdown of the Biodome's power grid. One evening, amidst the softly glowing coral and the gentle hum of the Biodome's filtration system, Zorp turned to Evelyn, his skin shimmering with a gentle, romantic amber. "Xylos," he communicated, his voice filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. They want to meet you." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. A visit to Xylos, a trip to another planet, was not exactly something she'd planned for her weekend. But the idea of meeting Zorp's people, of experiencing Glaubner culture firsthand, was both thrilling and slightly terrifying. "So," Evelyn said, attempting a nonchalant tone that belied her inner turmoil, "a honeymoon on Xylos? I should probably pack my underwater scuba gear, right?" Zorp chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the water. "And perhaps a supply of bioluminescent kelp. For scientific purposes, of course." His skin took on a suggestive shade of violet. The preparations for the trip were both exhilarating and chaotic. Packing for an alien planet proved to be a significant challenge, involving specially designed clothing, a translator device that was still prone to occasional malfunctions, and a rather extensive supply of high-quality sunscreen. Apparently, Xylos' suns were considerably stronger than Earth's. As the spaceship lifted off, leaving Earth behind, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement and anticipation. She was venturing into the unknown, embarking on an intergalactic adventure with the love of her life, a bioluminescent octopus with a penchant for romantic seaweed braiding and an occasional tendency to accidentally flood research facilities. It wasn't a typical honeymoon, but it was undeniably theirs. The journey to Xylos would be long, full of its own set of challenges and adventures. But Evelyn, hand in tentacle with Zorp, felt no fear. She knew, with absolute certainty, that no matter what the universe threw their way, they would face it together. And possibly, along the way, discover even more hilarious and unexpectedly romantic aspects of interspecies relationships. Their adventure had just begun. The honeymoon on Xylos was not just a trip, it was the start of their lives together. And it was going to be an adventure. An extraordinary, exhilarating, and utterly unforgettable adventure.